Okay, great. Well, my name is Jordy Izzard, and I'm an Alumni Relations Officer at SAIS, and I'm here with George Krumbhaar from the SAIS DC.
And George Krumbhaar's dog.
Class of 1962. And he went to Bologna and graduated in 1963. And what is your dog's name?
Tasha.
Tasha. Nice to meet you. And I think we're just going to have a conversation today. And why don't we get started and tell me a little bit about what what brought you to SAIS originally?
What brought me to SAIS originally, I was in the Army from 59 to 61. I got out of the Army in August. I didn't want to just hang around. I didn't have any job prospects. And I'd always been interested in something like the Foreign Service. And I knew about SAIS, but had not visited SAIS and was not very familiar with it. But I came down to Washington. I wanted to be in Washington, and I knew about SAIS. So I visited SAIS, and this was the old 19th Street SAIS. And the welcome that I got there was so genuine and so, how do you say, professional. And not only that, but partly because I'd been in the service, and partly because I had a head start in German, having been posted to Germany and studied German at college, that they were willing to take me, even though it was just a few weeks away from registration. So I jumped at the chance, and it was a very good chance, as the SAIS had a very strong German language program, and I was able to improve on the German that I already had.
So German was your language?
German was the language that I qualified in
Okay,
SAIS.
great.
Frau Stevens was the instructor there.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, then when you were at SAIS, actually you just started to get into some of your memories, but tell us a little bit about what you remember about being at SAIS, and Bologna, for that matter, in your second year.
Well, the biggest thing was the German program for me. That a lot of the other things, and we'll also get into this, about the value of a SAIS education, but the German program was probably the most valuable, lasting, actual sort of book learning thing that I learned at SAIS. It was unlike any language course I'd ever taken. We translated Walter Lippmann articles into Germany, Walter Lippmann being the prime op-ed writer one of the prime op-ed writers at that time. And then we translated articles from the Die Welt and the Süddeutsche Zeitung from German into English. So
wow, that's neat.
And my oral exam at SAIS, my German oral exam, had to do with the causes of the Vietnam War. So here I was expected to converse in German on something that I wasn't fully prepped to answer questions about even in English. So it was very, very challenging, and Frau Stevens was a terrific mentor, and I have carried that German language capability right up to today.
Wow, that's great. Did you pass the orals?
I passed the orals. Yeah,
yes, that's great.
I passed the orals.
That's
and,
great.
And have been using German off and on ever since. There were a lot of other courses. Probably some of the most valuable ones were ones that I took at Bologna, because they had Professor Grosser and Professor Du Rossel were at Bologna at that time. And the one that I took there with Professor Grosser was Modern German Literature, and the class was in German. We read books in German, and I'd never had a class actually in German before. At least with Frau Stevens, little smattering of English crept in there every now and then, but in the class with Professor Grosser, it was all in German. We read German. We reported on these German books that we read in German, and it was it was pressured, but it was very, very educational. There were a lot of other courses that pulled people from the outside into SAIS. We had a course which we nicknamed the Big Wide World. And it took place once or twice a week, and they pulled outsiders in to give lectures on various topics. That was also useful for just getting introduced to the kind of cast of characters in Washington, the kinds of people that work in the city, the kind of things they do, and the concerns that they bring to their work. That was also very useful. My first course in African history and culture and politics was also at SAIS, Professor Leistad. And that inspired me to visit Africa in the summer in between my 2 years. So 61, 62, I was in Washington. Summer of 62, I was in Ghana. And then in the fall of 62, I went to Bologna. And so that summer in Africa was also a kind of a watershed trip for me, because I had never been to a developing country before, and it gave me a chance to actually spend, I think I spent about 2 or 3 months in Ghana, interviewing people and staying at the University of Ghana and meeting a lot of people there. So that was, those are kind of lasting impressions I bring to today.
That's great. Did you enjoy it?
Yes, did I enjoy SAIS? Yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your career when you graduated. Did you start off thinking you were going to do something, and did you do it, or did your life sort of become an evolving path of career options? Or...
Well, like a lot of people whose career objectives aren't totally straight and narrow.
That tends to be the case at SAIS.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
By the spring of my second year, a number of things happened, one of which was the opportunity to go to law school. And so I decided that a SAIS education wasn't everything that I wanted in terms of formal education. So I went to law school. I was in Bologna at the time. I applied to law school, got into Columbia Law School, and graduated from law school and embarked on a law degree. Spent the first 3 years after law school at the Treasury Department. But the SAIS degree was critical because a job came up on the Hill, on Capitol Hill, which I heard about at a SAIS reception. And Dan Szabo, who preceded me by a few years, was working for Senator Javits. He was at the reception. He said that Javits had a staff position open on a Javits appointee on the Joint Economic Committee. So I applied for it, and the SAIS degree was the critical factor. You know, the senator looked at law degree. Well, there are a gajillion lawyers in Washington. The SAIS degree was, and the military service were the key additional factors which got me the job. I spent 12 years on the staff of the Joint Economic Committee working for Senator Javits.
Wow.
And the SAIS degree was critical in getting that. How much international affairs did I work on in the Joint Economic Committee job and afterwards? Relatively little, but you know, you do with your education what you can do, and the SAIS degree was critical. My original intent of doing something like the Foreign Service was really kind of evolved into something more, I guess, complicated after I got the law degree and all these other opportunities made themselves available. In the Treasury Department, for example, I worked first in what you might call fiscal operations as a lawyer, then in the international side of the Treasury as a lawyer. On the Joint Economic Committee, I did a lot of domestic economic policy work, and then a lot of international policy work, economic policy work, going to World Bank meetings every 3 years abroad, and the 2 out of 3 years in the United States, and every 3 years abroad. So there was a great deal of international, there's a big international component to what I did, but I didn't have, you might say, an international career after the SAIS the SAIS education.
That
Which
makes
again,
sense.
is,
Yeah.
we're going to get to what advice do you have for people. We'll get back to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Treasury, law school, Treasury, Capitol Hill, and then after Capitol Hill, after about 18 years on Capitol Hill, because I had several jobs here,
Congratulations. That's a long one.
I worked for a while downtown in a trade association
Which one?
called the American Rehabilitation Association. It's an association that represented rehab hospitals and the kinds of work centers that hire folks with disabilities and do a lot of rehab work with them. And so I worked for a couple of years for them. And then I started my own newsletter on the federal budget and appropriations. And again, what does that have to do with international? Not all that much, but it has everything to do with what a Washington career does for you. Washington careers are really unlike any other because there are so many different things you can do, and they're uniquely policy oriented as opposed to business oriented. So I feel as if I've had a very full Washington career. So started this newsletter. After that, after my work on the Hill, sold the newsletter to a company that is now part of Congressional Quarterly. I sold it to a company called Gallery Watch, which is now part of Congressional Quarterly. I worked for them for 6 or 7 years, and I'm now semi-retired, but have a totally new career teaching graduate students everything I know about the federal budget, which is the book that I'm writing as well. So
tell us more about that, the teaching and the book.
The teaching also happened by happenstance. The job in the Hill happened at a SAIS reception. The teaching happened when I read one of the many newsletters that I subscribed to, where they said that Carnegie Mellon University was opening a Washington campus and was looking for adjunct professors. So I applied. Of about 60 or 70 applications, I was the only one to propose a course in federal budget policy. And they liked what I gave them. And this is, I think, my 5th year. It's been extremely rewarding. And I feel it's kind of like a capstone kind of career, because it enables me to take everything that I've learned over the course of these years and to put it package it into a course that helps graduate students embark on their careers.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
it's very, very exciting, and I've stayed in touch with some of the students. It's extremely exciting to know that you're kind of leaving something behind in the form of kids embarking on their careers.
And how about the book?
The book, if you've ever taught, you realize that there's no book that presents course material exactly the way you want to do it yourself. There are a lot of very good books out there, but none of them quite do it the way, in the order that I wanted to do it. And so I decided, I was encouraged by the folks at Carnegie Mellon. I was encouraged to write my own book, and it's about, I guess, 9/10 done now. And
Good for you.
I use it in my own course. And it's like, kind of like where publishing is going. This is an online book with a lot of links in the book, so you can use the book to link to other sources, and it's an exciting project. And I thought I knew a lot about the budget, but you teach a course and then you write a book and you learn a great deal more.
That's excellent. So it's an online book. It's you're
Right
not
now
going to
it's-
actually publish a hard copy.
Right now it's online, and I'm trying to find a publisher that wants to do this kind of thing. There are publishers out there that do online publishing, and I need to get one that likes this kind of book.
Terrific. Well, we wish you well on that. That's excellent, and enjoy it in your class.
Yeah.
So you kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think the last thing we want to talk about is, given this illustrious career you just described, and your various forms of education, looking now at current students at SAIS, what advice might you have for them now?
I'm glad you asked this question
Yeah.
before on the phone.
Yeah.
There are probably two things. One is keep all your doors open. Keep all the doors open. Don't have a very narrow idea of where you want to go unless you're really sure you that you can make a go of it. Some people, I don't know, maybe they inherit the family business, so they know exactly what they want to do. But even then, there are a lot of doors that they need to keep open. But you never know quite how the world is going to evolve, what the big issues are going to be, what the hot spots of the world are going to be. So that's one piece of advice. Also, realize that when you get a degree, that's just, how do you say, it's just the beginning. People ask me, well, you know, what advice do you have when I go through law school? Well, you still have to choose a career. There's environmental law, there's criminal law, there's real estate law. You still have to figure out what you're going to do with your life when you graduate from law school. You still have to figure what you're going to do with your life when you graduate from SAIS. Sure. So keep those doors open and choose a path that feels challenging and where you think you can contribute. That's sort of advice number one. The second is book learning is important, but contacts are really important. Get to know people. Try to get an internship. Write things and see if you can't get them published. Try to just don't just lock yourself up in a cubicle and study and read. Use the SAIS degree and the SAIS education to make contacts with the outside, because those are the you can't do it alone. And the people who are already out there in the profession you want to join, those are folks who are going to help you a great deal. So get to know them, and that's extremely important.
Terrific. Well, that's very helpful, I'm sure. I should also just add that today's date, I believe I mentioned, is March 29th, 2012.
Yes.
And we just wanted to say thanks so much for your time.
You're certainly welcome.
And we really appreciate it, and thanks for all you've done in the world.
Well, thank you. And Tasha thanks you too.